I found myself just sitting here wasting time. I don't know why. I just hit the record button. Let's do this thing. Sometimes you got to wing it a little bit. Welcome, one and all, foolish mortals, to the Haunted Mansion. Hope I don't get sued. I think that's the beginning. At Dan Besbris on Twitter. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Doing things all out of order today. I'm all out of sorts. I don't know why. I got no excuse. Sorts or not, please do hit that subscribe button. However you're taking in this content. YouTube, subscribe. iTunes, Spotify, subscribe. If you're listening on a traditional pod, 5-star review, please, come on. And on YouTube, hit that like button. It's so easy. The subscribe and the like buttons are so simple on YouTube. They've streamlined it because they want you to hit those buttons. And so do I. And today we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who went 64-18 last year. Hell of a season for the Cavs that, once again, ended with a bit of disappointment. Now, admittedly, they were beset by injuries in the playoffs, and that's kind of the way it goes. You know, the team that survives, it's sort of the war of attrition type stuff. That tends to be the team that makes it farther. We saw Indiana go as far as they could go before Tyrese Halliburton blew out, a whole leg. First, it was like a strain, and then, you try to play on it. And in any event, if your stars stay healthy, you got a pretty good shot. If they don't, they don't. And the Cavs open up this year with our friends over on FanDuel Sports and the FanDuel Sportsbook partners here on the Believe Network and on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball with a season win total mark of 55.5. Everybody loves the over, but not me. Quoth the great Shooter McGavin. What's that line in the original Happy Gilmore where he's like, yeah, everybody loves what Happy's bringing to the tour. Well, I don't, Scott. This is Shooter's time. Anyway, it's Dan's time now. And here on Dan's time, I think FanDuel's got that number too high. I know they had 64 wins last year, but everything had to break right. They were a perfectly oiled machine during the regular season. Their stars stayed healthy during the regular season, even if they didn't so much during the playoffs. Evan Mobley played 71. Donovan Mitchell played 71. Darius Garland, 75. Jarrett Allen, all 82. The four most critical players on that team were on the floor until they didn't need them to be. They gave them a few rest days down the stretch. These teams missed, like the key guys. Darius Garland missed like a week before stretch run. Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley missed like 2 weeks. That's nothing. Jarrett Allen literally played every single game last year, which is cool because that's not always the case. And from a fantasy standpoint, that matters. To Jarrett Allen's credit, he's been, by and large, pretty durable. Not overwhelmingly so, but pretty much. Over the last 2 seasons, he's only missed 5 games. Year before that, he did miss 14, so that one was a little bit more. COVID year, he missed 16. First COVID year, that was the trade season for Jarrett Allen. He only missed like 9, so that was pretty good. No, that's not right. There was a 26er in there, so there was one bad season. Then there was a 9, a 12, a 2, a 10. Anyway, by and large, Jarrett Allen's been pretty healthy. So let's just start with Jarrett Allen then, because that's who we're talking about right now. He's been, we've named a draft area after him. Do I think he's going to play in all 82 games again? I do not. Did I name the run of centers that comes off the board between picks 35? I've been saying 35 to 65. Maybe I should just say 37 and say, but that's not really accurate because a couple of them go right at the tail end of the 3rd round most years. So I like the 35 number. The 35 to 65 run of centers. And it happened last year. It almost happens every year because they get pushed to a specific spot. It's not a coincidence at this point because centers don't score a lot. So someone like a Jarrett Allen is never going to go earlier than where he's been going because he scores 13.5 points a game. Last year he did. Year before that, he was actually at 16.5. But then there was 14, 16, 11, 13, like predictably sub-average in points, as are many of the centers that go in the Jarrett Allen corridor. And it's named after Jarrett because it's players like him who get you sub-average points by a little bit, don't shoot threes all that much, a couple of them might, but rebound, field goal percent, like fairly traditional center stuff with obvious tweaks around the edges. Jarrett Allen, not as great of a shot blocker as some of the other centers that go in that run, but a better foul shooter, more durable, great field goal percent. You can look up and down that area of players, and like we don't need to do it on today's show because we've done it before, but there's like 9 to 10 centers that go in that 30 player slot, which is a lot when a third of the picks are 1 out of the 5 positions, especially when you consider the fact that, like, even if you call it positionless basketball, guard forward should take up more like 80% of the players out there. So you would think that centers would only be about 20%. But during this run, this is where they get mushed. Vooch, who we just talked about on yesterday's show, is a player that gets mushed into the Jarrett Allen corridor. I kind of feel like I need to look it up while we're talking about it, but I also don't really want to because it's going to get us sidetracked. Point is, Jarrett Allen, you've got a corridor named after you on draft day, and the reason is you're going to fall somewhere in the middle to back end of this group of centers because you're not eye-popping in almost any meaningful way. You don't score. You rebound relatively well. You don't really block that many shots. You do fine combined steals and blocks. Not great, but fine. You're a terrific field goal percent guy. You shoot over 70% at the free throw line, which you take from a more traditional center. And so this is where he'll end up. He's not going to fall farther because the players behind him are way too unreliable. And he's not going to go earlier because he doesn't do enough. So Jarrett Allen's going to get drafted between probably 48 and 65. And he'll probably do just fine in that regard. I should mention, by the way, as we talk about the Cavs on today's show, they are, I don't want to say a simple team to handicap because the Darius Garland injury does complicate things a little bit. He's expected to miss the start of the season, and you know how I feel about guys that are expected to miss the start of the year. So let's go to the player who was, oh, you know what? He was number 2. I forgot. Evan Mobley was actually ranked higher. Well, whatever. Donovan Mitchell, next on the board. For a long time, for the couple of years he was in Cleveland, he was the number 1 fantasy player on the Cavaliers. This year, he fell to number 2 behind Evan Mobley. And that is because Donovan Mitchell just did less in every way. He played less. He shot less. He rebounded, assisted, stole, blocked less. He turned it over less. His field goal percent was lower. Random fluctuation more than anything else. His free throw percent was a little lower. It was just, it's funny to think of it this way because the Cavs were so good, but this was by all accounts kind of an off year for Donovan Mitchell, partly because he just didn't have to do as much. Evan Mobley did more. Darius Garland did more. So they were blowing teams out, this well-oiled machine that they were, and so he didn't have to play all that much. I mean, look, the best number that you can look at on the Cavs is 31 and a half. Donovan Mitchell's minutes per game this year, the highest of anyone on the Cavaliers. That's how, and it's similar to what we saw when we did the Oklahoma City breakdown. They were involved in so many games where they were up huge that these guys didn't have to play as many minutes. I'm sure, the target was probably more like 32, 33, somewhere in there. But the fact that they were a minute and a half to 2 minutes lower than that tells you how often they didn't need to play the final 2 to 3 minutes of a basketball game. From that standpoint, I think Donovan Mitchell is actually due for a little bit of a bounce back for a couple of reasons. Number one, what we just talked about. I don't think the Cavaliers are going to blow teams out the same way they did last year. This is a team that was great during the regular season and then flamed out in the playoffs when at this point, I don't even remember how many guys missed games. I feel like Donovan Mitchell was mostly healthy in the playoffs. Yeah. Donovan Mitchell was one of the ones who made it. Congrats. I forget who didn't. Did Mobley get hurt? DeAndre Hunter got hurt, right? Mobley missed one game in the playoffs. Was Garland the other one? Yeah, Darius Garland missed the last couple games of the playoffs. DeAndre Hunter missed most of the second round. Mobley missed part of it. Garland missed part of it. Like, they started falling apart at that point. So the lesson learned is probably not correct, because I don't think the Cavaliers' regular season grind was the reason behind 3 injuries during the second round of the playoffs, because they were fine during a Miami sweep. They had time, by the way, before that second round to actually get healthy. So, like, shouldn't be the case. But at the same time, you know they're going to conflate the two. They're going to kid glove their players a little bit more this season, realizing, okay, like, yeah, home court is great, but 100% health, that's greater. So I lost my train of thought just for a second there. Coming back to Donovan Mitchell, like, his number of games played is relatively repeatable, 71 out of 82. But Darius Garland, if he's hurt coming into the year, they're not going to push it. They're not. And that means more for Donovan Mitchell, who played most of the previous season with a banged up Darius Garland and had a fantastic year. Oh, I remember where I was going with all this. Okay, so look, because these guys were extraordinarily healthy and everything was going right, they didn't have to play as many minutes, and they wrapped up home court and all that good stuff. I think there's going to be, for one, a little more jockeying for position down the stretch. So down the stretch, rest days probably less this coming year, but maybe in the middle of the year, rest days, perhaps a tiny bit higher. Perhaps that also levels off a little bit. I do think that because the Cavs are likely to play slightly more competitive games this season, you probably see Donovan Mitchell tick up back into the 32s in minutes per game. Maybe we even get lucky and he gets up into the 33s. I hope the field goal percent comes back. I can't guarantee it. I hope the free throw percent comes back. I also can't guarantee that. But, and this is more for a roto league than head-to-head, but if he starts the year strong with Garland probably out for a little bit, you get to bank that. Yeah, head-to-head, obviously, like, if he plays most of the season with Darius Garland, ultimately the rank will level off, and, like, the Donovan Mitchell you get is going to be the one that plays alongside another star-level player. But roto, bank it. It always felt a little bit like the 1.8 steals per game that Donovan Mitchell had last season was way too high. And he's been throughout his career a pretty good steals player, but I wouldn't be that surprised to see 1.3 repeat itself. But if he plays an extra 5 to 8% in minutes, add an extra 1.5, 2 minutes per game, whatever, I think the steals probably come up again to maybe more like 1.4. I know we're just talking about a tenth, but that's relevant. So I think we probably get a little bit of a bounce back here from Donovan Mitchell. How much of a bounce back remains to be seen, but he fell all the way to number 35 in 9-cat this past season, and it wasn't because turnovers were bad. It was because everything went down year over year. If everything ticks back up year over year, you could certainly see Donovan climbing back to early third round, late second. I think probably the days of him being a turn player, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that's probably done as long as the rest of the like if Darius Garland misses half the season, then maybe you get half a year where Donovan Mitchell's a first rounder. But I don't think Darius Garland's going to miss more than a month coming into the year. And so let's say Donovan Mitchell is the top 15 for a month and then, top 25, top 30 for the rest of the year. That pushes him probably into that late second round range. So probably a safe-ish mid to late second rounder on draft day. You'd obviously like to get him a little bit later than that if possible. I just don't think he will because he's still, at the end of the day, he's still Donovan Mitchell. That's who we were talking about there. Let's talk about Evan Mobley, who we got this one right. As much as we got the Donovan Mitchell one wrong, I thought he was going to be fine last year, and he fell off a cliff. Mobley was one of the guys that we talked about leading up to the season as sort of prime to take a step forward. I hesitate to call it a breakout because he was already very good. But because we were only, I got to switch it back off of postseason. Because we were only 3 seasons into his NBA career, there was this, not unknown, but there was this weird mushing of opportunity and sour taste that led to a really easy call on an upward Evan Mobley season. Now, let's talk back through what we had discussed leading up to this last year, which was basically Evan Mobley, 23-24 season, played the whole year hurt. He played 50 games. He was never 100% himself. And still, by all accounts, had a pretty good year. Blimp. He was number 42, not this season, but the prior one, on only 11 shots per game, because he was at 2.3 defensive stats, 9.5 boards, 3 assists. There was a lot of stuff that was going well. But he wasn't fully right. He wasn't healthy. He wasn't moving the same as usual. So coming into this season, and by the way, it didn't all the way hit even. We only got a partial hit on this one. The thought was, okay, well, his minutes were at 30.5 last year because of coming back from injury. They were sort of artificially depressed. But the speed he was playing with, that was more evident in the fact that he was just he wasn't doing quite as much on the offensive side. Not like a big drop off, but enough to where you're like, okay. Fast forward to this year, the handicap was, look, this is a guy that was primed to play more like 32, 33 minutes per ball game. He was 34 his first 2 seasons in the NBA. So take the offensive upgrades he had made, take the free throw upgrades he made, and then just add 10% playing time to that. Well, boy, you're in business at that point. Interestingly, there wasn't a 10% bump in playing time because of all the stuff we've talked about. The Cavs were just beating teams senseless. But the minutes he was on the court were more efficient, more involved is probably a better word, minutes for Mobley. They were for almost everyone on the team because the Cavs were just, again, throttling clubs last year on their way, again, to 64 wins. Which brings us back to that FanDuel number again of 55.5. The total, you got to think everybody's going to take the over because they already beat that number by whatever it is, 8.5 wins last year. Why would they drop off 8.5 wins? Well, because it's freaking hard to win 60-plus games, and reality is going to set in where the regular season's not going to feel as relevant. So I still go back to that thing, and I still lean to the under. But as far as Evan Mobley goes, there's actually a universe where he could be even better this coming season. Kind of like what we just talked about with Donovan Mitchell, less so with Jarrett Allen because Jarrett Allen's the same no matter what. His minutes were also down, by the way. You could see potentially a slightly better Jarrett Allen. I wouldn't bank on it because the field goal percent could come down. Other stuff goes up a little bit and so on and so forth. With Mobley, if they play more competitive games, fewer blowouts, and you add 1.5, 2 minutes to his daily total, and you give him a little 5% spike in whatever, call it half a rebound, part of an assist, a tenth of a steal, and a tenth of a block, and all those, and a point or whatever. Now you're talking about a guy that, remember, this past season, he was already into the second round. He was number 23 in 9CAT. He could push up into the middle of the second round this coming year. Because of all the injuries to superstars, I don't know where Mobley gets drafted. My assumption is that he probably goes near the beginning of the 3rd round. I'm fine with that. I think Mobley has a solid year. I hope that he stays healthy. That's going to be a big key for this whole team. But one of the little footnotes on the Cavs, maybe it's the biggest footnote, is that if all they have to do is not beat teams so mercilessly, And almost everybody on the club can be a little bit better. So I could see Evan Mobley being, a couple slots better. I could see Donovan Mitchell being like a half round better. You could see Jarrett Allen being a little bit better. He was number 53 this last year. You could get him back into the 40s. There's actually a lot of reason for fantasy optimism on the Cavs, even while I'm telling you to probably fade their season win total mark. And that's partially because of this man, Darius Garland, who was incredible last year, finally healthy again, where we saw, the Darius Garland that looked like he was breaking out in 22-23, monster year, 22 points, 8 assists. He looked great. And then the following year, he just had nothing in the tank. Field goal percent down, scoring down, assists down, games played way down. Well, he came back this year. And the amazing thing about it is that Darius Garland played 3 fewer minutes per game this season, but took 1 extra shot in that time on the court. He took more free throws than last year, not more than when he was playing 35 and a half minutes, but more than last year. His assists were actually slightly up season over season. His scoring was way up. He was just super involved and, again, beat teams to a pulp. The plan was never, this was the Cavs having everything go the way they wanted it to. Coming into the year, the plan's never to, we are intending to play our superstars 30 and a half minutes per game. The plan was probably, we'd like not to keep him from having to play 35, 36. Let's see if we can get him down to 32, 33. Most stars don't play fewer than 32, 33 minutes unless you're winning half of your games by double digits. You don't have to. But, of course, Darius Garland is hurt coming into this year. That's the sort of the rub on him, where, again, you could make the same argument as the other 3 Cavs, which is, look, if these guys... Just realizing I have a bruise on the bottom of my foot. If these guys all play 5% more this coming year, well, great. That's overall good. They might not be quite as efficient in the time they're on the court, so we do need to be somewhat cognizant of that as well. But with Garland, you guys know my stance. Unless we get a great medical update. Not good, because good can be fudged a little bit. We need a great medical update on Darius Garland leading up to the start of the year. That's he's expected to play. They're hoping to have him back in 1 week. Something very concrete like that. He's probably not a player that I'm drafting this year. And I know he was awesome this past season. He finished at number 45 on a per-game basis, 21 points, 3 boards, 7 assists. These are all really good numbers. And, by the way, not all that far from where he was being drafted. So there was a lot of mission accomplished banners being rolled out. I liked Darius Garland last year. I ended up with him on a couple of teams because he was sort of that last decent scoring point guard you could get in the early mid. I would say try to avoid him. That's my take here on August 19th. Again, 2 months from now, we're coming up to the season, and the report is he's getting super duper close. Maybe I change my tune, but you have to draft 2, 3, 4 days before your season starts, probably. I guess you don't have to, but the weekend before, 2, 3 days. If you don't have a good report on Darius Garland by the time you're doing your draft, then I would say probably dodge. But the other regulars, and we'll talk about a couple of the slightly fringier players here in just a second. The other regulars like Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, I like all of those guys this coming year. And Donovan Mitchell probably doesn't fall at all, even though he was a disappointment last year. So that's one that maybe we can't go targeting. But Jarrett Allen's not going to go very high. I'll end up with him on fantasy teams again because frickin' Jarrett Allen corridor, man. Never lets you down. Evan Mobley, he'll go pretty high, and he'll deserve it. So I'm good with that, too. And then with Garland, probably best to leave it alone. Here's a player I wanted to talk about just for maybe 90 seconds. And that's Lonzo Ball, who the Cavs brought in to basically back up the point guard spot while Garland is out. I don't know, and the reason I want to bring it up is because I don't know that necessarily means he's going to start. In fact, I'd be a little bit surprised if he did. I think they're more likely to run Donovan Mitchell as the starting point guard. they don't have Ty Jerome anymore, or he would have been the potential slide-in guy. It may be that they just run a little bit big and go Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley in the front court. Your wings become DeAndre Hunter and Max Strus. And then you run Donovan Mitchell as sort of like a scoring point guard. If Lonzo Ball, and I give it a 10, 15% chance. If Lonzo Ball ends up with a starting job, you could probably treat him as like a burger board start the year hamburger. Nothing like a breakfast burger. That's basically what that is. If you draft a guy, if you draft someone and your goal is just to ride them until they're not the starter anymore, that's effectively now, that's what we're going to call a breakfast burger, because it's a burger board guy. You know you're not getting a long-term thing. Lonzo Ball's not a long-term thing. But let's say he starts while Darius Garland is out. He would be someone you could throw on your team as a burger board replacement just to start the year. Also, notables on this team, I just mentioned two of them as I was going through other possible starters, DeAndre Hunter and Max Strus. These guys are, in my opinion, probably not going to do enough. Hunter is a efficiency scoring type. Strus is a not super efficient, but can do a little bit of a few things kind of type. But, I mean, even with Darius Garland out, I don't know that there's enough for either one of those guys. The likeliest case would be, well, okay, not the likeliest, but let's say DeAndre Hunter does get a starting job while Darius Garland is out. And again, there's no Ty Jerome to back it up. You did remove a lot of shots from the equation that way. So in that case, you might get, like, DeAndre Hunter could go top 100 while Garland is out. I don't think Max Strus will. And Hunter's not going to be fun, but, you know, you might get like 16, 17, 18 points in there and 5 boards and decent percentages. So give a look at Hunter as like a 1-star burger board type of draft pick. But I do believe that once Garland is back, whenever that happens to be, and, you know, the target might be a week or two into the season, I think they slow play it a little bit, and maybe it's more like 3-4 weeks into the season. We'll see. While he's out, you might be able to get top 100 out of Hunter, top 90. You might be able to get something similar out of Lonzo Ball, but these are short-term fixes. So don't spend too much of your energy on it. These are guys that you would look at taking right at the tail end of your draft and treat them like a really good free agent pickup for a couple of weeks. And that is the Cavaliers. We didn't have to go 30 minutes on that one. I've been talking a lot lately. Now that the kids are in school, the pods go a little bit longer, but this one doesn't need to. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hit that like button on YouTube. Subscribe. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Subscribe. That's a big one. I'm Dan Besbris on Twitter. Old Man Squad. You can find that handle pretty much every which place. And today's what? Tuesday? All right. Back tomorrow with another Central Division team unless they open leagues. Fingers crossed. See you then.